The legal thunderbolt struck the media landscape with seismic force, a $900 million defamation lawsuit that media insiders immediately dubbed the silenced First Lady's revenge tour. Melania Trump, the Sphinx-like former occupant of the East Wing, had transformed overnight from reluctant public figure to legal warrior princess, wielding her complaint like Excalibur against the ramparts of daytime television. This could be the largest defamation lawsuit to ever make the media establishment soil. Their collective Armani, whispered a courthouse insider watching as clerks process paperwork that would soon set phones ablaze across Manhattan's media kingdom. 900 million, that's not a number you throw around unless you're either insane or incredibly serious. Mrs. Trump is definitely not insane. Inside ABC's glass and steel fortress, the afternoon sun cast long shadows as executives performed what crisis manager term financial catastrophe calculus, that frantic mathematical gymnastics when corporations suddenly Fay 9-fig liability exposure conference rooms transformed into war rooms, with the view suddenly less about coffee mugs and hot topics and more about corporate survival. She was never going to stay silent forever, remarked a former white House staffer requesting the journalistic witness protection of anonymity. People mistook her quietness for weakness, the classic predator's miscalculation. The staffer paused, lowering their voice to conspiratorial levels. Melania doesn't just enter battles, she choreographs them like deadly ballets, where only she knows the final movement. The lawsuit filed during what began as an unremarkable Tuesday at the federal courthouse carried the precision timing of a military strike, surprising the enemy during their complacent midday routine. Legal experts gathered like soothsayers around the filing, divining its significance between sips of overpriced espresso. This isn't merely litigation, it's declaration of where against consequence. Free character. Assassination, declared Alan Dershowitz, his bow tie seemingly tightening with each syllable of constitutional analysis. The media has long operated in the privileged space between opinion and falsehood. Mrs. Trump just redrew those boundaries with nuclear precision behind closed doors at the View Prod. C assistant, engaged in what staffers called comment archaeology, the desperate excavation of transcripts to determine exactly which verbal hand grenade had finally provoked the former First Lady's wrath. Sunny Hostin, meanwhile, maintained her own-air composure while reportedly cycling through the 5 stages of defamation: grief, backstage, denial, anger, bargaining, panic, and finally frantic calls to her insurance provider. The question hanging in the rarefied air of media boardrooms wasn't whether blood would spill, but whose how much, and whether 9 figures would be enough to stanch the wound. As network executives stared at potential balance sheet apocalypse, one undeniable truth emerged: Melania Trump had mastered the art of revenge, served at precisely absolute zero, the match that ignited this 9-figure inferno was struck on what had seemed an ordinary Tuesday broadcast of The View, that daily ritual of caffeinated commentary where the line between opinion and character assassination has long existed in a state of televised quantum uncertainty. Sunny Hostin sconed in the protective bubble of ABC's studio, surrounded by nodding co-hosts, and a sympathetic audience leaned forward with what industry insiders call the pundit's certainty, that peculiar confidence reserved for those pronouncing judgment on lives they've never lived and marriages they've never witnessed. Let's be honest here, Sunny had declared, her voice carrying the unmistakable cadence of someone who believes microphones confer omniscience. Melania Trump clearly hates her husband. She's just pretending to love Donald for the financial benefits. That's not a real marriage. It's a business arrangement with occasional photo ops. The studio audience, that Greek chorus of daytime television, erupted in what producers term validation applause, that Pavlovian response when liberal-leaning viewers hear a conservative figure deconstructed. Sunny's co-hosts perform synchronized nodding, that choreographed affirmation that transforms conjecture into perceived consensus. My sources close to the Trump family tell me she can barely stand to be in the same room with him, Sunny continued, despite possessing what fact-checkers would later Term a complete absence of actual sources. Her voice carried that television tenor that transforms gossip into apparent gospel. She's counting days until she can cash out. What Sunny and her producers failed to notice was the silent viewer in Palm. Beach the subject of their casual character dissection, watching with what those who know her describe as Slovenian stillness, that deceptive calm that precedes calculated action. Rather than emotional reaction, she crossed a line that day explained. A confidant of the former First Lady questioning someone's politics is fair. Game questioning their marriage, their love, based on what a feeling. That's when Melania decided enough was enough in the days that followed while The View continued. Its daily ritual of political pontification, a different kind of production was underway. Melania's legal team, a collection of litigation specialists with the collective demeanor of chess grandmasters, began assembling what they'd termed the Accountability Archive, a meticulously documented history of Host's on-air statements about the Trump marriage. Opinion is protected by the First Amendment, explained a constitutional scholar following the case, but stating as fact that someone hates their spouse and is only with them for money without evidence that's potentially crossing into defamation territory, particularly when you have millions of viewers taking your words as truth. The most damning aspect of Sunny's commentary wasn't just what she said, it was the absolute certainty with which she said it, as though she possessed some secret marital surveillance system in mar a go. This wasn't presented as speculation or possibility, it was delivered as established fact from an authoritative source, as video clips of the segment spread across social media platforms where context goes to die and outrage comes to multiply. Melania's silence was misinterpreted as weakness by those who had never understood her fundamental nature. The former model had spent decades in an industry where timing is everything, and this time she was timing. Her response for maximum impact, meanwhile, in ABC's executive suites, nobody yet felt the tremors of the legal earthquake preparing to reshape their financial landscape. Sunny continued her daily appearances unaware. She had just lit the fuse on what one media attorney would later call the defamation detonation of the decade, when news of Melania's legal lightning strike first penetrated the hallowed halls of ABC. Sunny Hostin performed what crisis management experts term the cavalier dismissal, that reflexive minimization of threat that often precedes catastrophic realization. Her initial reaction captured behind the scenes by what insiders describe as increasingly nervous production. Assistance was a masterclass in misplaced confidence. "Can you believe this, Sunny?" reportedly chuckled to her makeup artist while preparing for the next day's broadcast, performing what body language experts call the defensive hair fluff, that unconscious groom behavior that betrays growing anxiety beneath projected calm. Another Trump tantrum they love playing. Victim almost as much as they love their golden toilets inside the View production offices, that bustling hive of deadline-driven activity, now buzzing with new urgency. Staff members exchange what workplace psychologists identify as concern glances, those silent communications that acknowledge potential danger while maintaining professional composure. Yet publicly, the show maintained what media strategists call the invulnerability illusion proceeding, as though nine-figure litigation was merely an inconvenient backdrop to their regularly scheduled programming. Mrs. Trump needs to understand that in America, we have this little thing called the First Amendment, Sunny declared during an off-air conversation. With colleagues, her voice carrying what voice analysts identify as faltering bravado, confidence undermined by the subtle vocal tremors of emerging doubt. "My opinion is protected speech. Her lawsuit is going nowhere." The ABC legal department, that institutional immune system designed to protect corporate bodies from litigation infections, began what attorneys call transcript triage, the emergency assessment of exactly what had been said and how defensible those statements might prove in court. Their preliminary findings prompted what HR professionals recognize as the urgent weekend meeting, that rarely positive gathering that suggests normal business hours are insufficient to contain a growing crisis. The problem isn't that you expressed an opinion, a network. Attorney reportedly explained to Sonny during a closed-door session that witnesses describe as increasingly tense. The problem is you presented speculation about her marriage as established fact without any sourcing whatsoever. That's potentially where the vulnerability lies. Sonny's facial expression during this explanation reportedly demonstrated what psychologists term realization, dawning that slow-motion collapse of certainty as consequences come into focus when the attorney mentioned the $900 million figure. Sonny exhibited what medical professionals identify as acute financial vertigo, that dizzy sensation when threat assessments suddenly include additional zeros. "But what can they actually do to me?" Sonny asked, her voice. Performing what linguists recognize as the hopeful diminishment question, seeking reassurance that threats are smaller than they appear. The attorney's silent exchange of glances with network executives answered more eloquently than words could have. As the days progressed and legal documents circulated among increasingly concerned ABC executives, Sonny's on-air demeanor underwent what behavioral analysts call the subtle withdrawal, maintaining professional poise while strategically avoiding certain topics with the precision of someone navigating a verbal minefield behind the scenes. However, staff reported increasing instances of what co-workers term the backstage blame game. "Why didn't any of you stop me?" Sonny reportedly demanded of production staff during what meeting specialists classify as the accountability deflection session. "Where was legal review before this aired? I'm not going down alone for something the whole show participated in." Meanwhile, in Palm Beach, Milan, Trump maintained her characteristic silence, that strategic absence of public comment that communications experts identify as vacuum creation, allowing opponents to fill the silence with increasingly panicked speculation as Sonny's confidence began its slow-motion collapse. Melania's legal team methodically assembled what trial attorneys call the evidence mountain, that overwhelmingly documented case designed not merely to win, but to obliterate opposition. The question hanging over ABC's offices was no longer if they should worry, but precisely how worried they should be. While Sonny Hostin performed what public relations experts term the ostrich maneuver, that futile attempt to make threats disappear through strategic ignorance, Melania Trump executed what military historians recognize as thesilent, offensive. No tweets, no tearful interviews, no public hand-wringing, just the cold, calculated deployment of legal artillery with Swiss watch precision. "Mrs. Trump doesn't telegraph her punches," whispered a former East Wing staffer, speaking in the hushed tones of someone who had witnessed the former First Lady's strategic mind at work. She studied her opponents for years while everyone underestimated her. That wasn't patience, it was reconnaissance. Within 72 hours of Sonny's on-air proclamations about the Trump marriage, Melania's legal team, an assemblage of litigation specialists with the collective demeanor of cardiothoracic surgeons, delivered what courthouse veterans call the thud, filing a complaint so substantively heavy that clerks claimed it made an audible sound when placed on the docket counter. "This isn't just a defamation claim," explained a legal analyst reviewing the documents. "It's a meticulously constructed argument that The View and Hostin engaged in a pattern of deliberate character assassination," masked his commentary. "They've documented years of statements, establishing what litigation strategists call malice architecture, showing this wasn't a one-time slip, but a constructed narrative designed to damage inside the 87-page filing." What document specialists identify as the overwhelming approach Melania's attorneys had compiled, what evidence experts call the media pattern, proof. Dozens of instances where The View had targeted conservative women with personal attacks that went beyond political criticism into character destruction. The document demonstrated what legal scholars term the premeditation principle, proving these weren't spontaneous remarks, but calculated character strikes. Most plaintiffs file emotional lawsuits, noted a veteran media attorney not involved in the case. "This isn't emotional, it's surgical. The Trump team spent months building this case before anyone knew it existed. That's not reactive litigation. That's a planned operation." The massive Financial demand, $900 million, represented what negotiation experts identify as the shock number strategy, not because they necessarily expected to receive the full amount, but because the figure itself would force ABC into what corporate defenders call existential response mode, where settlement becomes more attractive than risking company-threatening liability. Look at the brilliant timing observed a crisis. Management consultant studying the case filed on a Tuesday afternoon, giving news cycles. Maximum time to build through the week, submitted to the court division with the judge, most likely to allow discovery to proceed, announced through channels that ensured both conservative and mainstream outlets would cover it simultaneously. This wasn't just legal action, it was a media operation. Melania's legal team issued just one public statement, a masterpiece of what communication specialists call restrained aggression. Read simply, Mrs. Trump has allowed her filing to speak for itself. The truth has been systematically attacked. Now the truth will have its day in court. The former First Lady maintained what behavioral experts term strategic invisibility, disappearing from public view precisely when curiosity about her reached its peak. No interviews, no statements, no social media posts. This silence, what media trainers identify as narratives, starve force news outlets to focus exclusively on the legal merits rather than personality conflicts. She's using silence as a weapon, explained. A veteran political strategist, by saying nothing, she forces the view to fill the void, and with every shaky step, ABC's big wigs stared at the numbers, the sponsors, the lawsuit, and saw a nightmare staring back. Could they pull the plug to save the ship, or double down and hope for a miracle? The clock was ticking, and Melania wasn't done yet. The clock was ticking, and ABC couldn't stop it. Melania's $900 million lawsuit had the network on its knees. Sponsors wavered. Execs scrambled. The View's once solid ground was crumbling, and every move Melania made tightened the noose. Now the real fight loomed. Court day was closing in fast. Both sides dug in, weapons drawn, ready for illegal showdown that could rewrite the rules. This wasn't just a lawsuit anymore, it was war, and the stakes were sky high. Melania's team came out. Swinging sources leaked the bombshell. They had proof, not just guesses, hard evidence, old interviews, clips of The View's hosts tearing into conservative women like it was sport. This isn't a one-off illegal insider whispered vote tight. It's a pattern. They've got a mountain of it. Melania's lawyers weren't playing small. They aimed to prove Sunny and her crew didn't just slip up. They planned it, every word, every jab, a calculated smear campaign masked as hot takes. We've got the receipts, one attorney reportedly bragged, eyes glinting. This goes way beyond Sunny's rant. A BC fired back hard. Their defense, free speech, it's opinion, not fact. A network lawyer snapped in a leaked memo, voice dry with defiance. She's protected, end of story, but the bravado rang hollow behind closed doors. Panic simmered. Words slipped out. They feared the judge wouldn't buy it. Sunny's claim, Melania hating Donald, faking love for cash, wasn't tossed out casually. She'd sold it as gospel. No allegedly in sight. That's the line a legal analyst warned on air. Cross it and free speech won't save you. ABC's team scrambled to store up their case, but the cracks were showing. The media smelled blood. Headlines roared biggest defamation. Clash ever. Pundits warmed. Cable news picking sides. Melania has got a shot, one argued. Brow furrowed. This could expose media bias for good. Another pushed back. Sunny safe courts love the First Amendment. The buzz hit fever pitch. X lit up with takes, some cheering Melania's stand, others mocking her odds. She's taking on a titan. A viral post read, win or lose, that's guts. The public leaned in, hooked on every twist. Melania stayed cool as ice. No statements, no leaks from her camp, just that quiet confidence that drove Sunny nuts. Her silence wasn't retreat, it was strategy. She let ABC sweat. Let the evidence speak. Let the court date creep closer. Sunny, though she was a mess. What do they have on me? She reportedly grilled, her lawyer's voice spiking with dread. No one knew, not fully, that uncertainty gwed at her, at ABC, at everyone watching. Here's the rub. Melania wasn't just fighting for herself, she was swinging for every conservative voice. The View had trashed over the years her team's evidence didn't just defend her marriage. It aimed to torch the network's playbook. ABC saw the trap. If this hit court, those clips could air publicly. Every smug jab, every BAS dig exposed. We're not ready for that. In exec, muttered Facepale. They weren't, but Melania was. The showdown loomed, both sides locked and loaded. Melania's proof versus ABC's. Shield, the judge's gavel, would decide could Sonny dodge the bullet or would Melania blow the whole game.